What's up, everybody? I hope y'all are having a wonderful day. I'm Anthony. On today's video, I got something super special for y'all. Today, I want to show you exactly what you can do with your property, even if you have a smaller one, in terms of growing your own food the long-term way, all right? That way of planting perennials. I have over 30 perennials on my property. Some of them I planted, some of them I just found, and I want to show you all of them. I want to walk around the property and actually show y'all what they are. That way you can maybe get your wheels spinning in your mind and potentially do the same thing for your property. At least have some of these ideas, especially if it's in the southeast like I do. So maybe you can plant some more food that you didn't even realize you could plant. That's right, today's video is all about perennials. Perennial meaning you plant one time and you can keep harvesting season after season after season. So anything that stays alive over one season is considered a perennial. Well, most everything, because you have annuals, you have biannuals, and you have perennials. Obviously annuals survive 1 year, biannuals survive 2 years, and perennials survive over 3, keep going and going. So when you're planting things like perennials, you have to do the hard work really only one time, and then just the next year after year afterwards, you can collect the reward for that hard work. So that's why perennials are so lucrative if you actually know what you're doing and you take time to understand what you're doing and research for your own area. But it can be an extremely laid back way of growing and collecting food. So before I get started, I want to make sure I mention that this is not in any kind of order. I'm basically starting in the back of my property where all the trees are, the woods, the forest, and I want to show you the ones that I've picked out in the forest as perennials that I can eat, and then we'll work our way back to the yard. So number one, first thing foremost, oaks. If you don't pay attention to the fact if you have oaks or not, you're missing out on a golden opportunity to have food. I'm sure a lot of you realize that if you pay attention to the Native Americans before we were here, they were all eating acorns as part of their diet, all right? If you treat them right, if you actually get them to the point where you can wash out the tannins and process them correctly, you can make acorn flour and basically be baking your own stuff using acorns, okay? It doesn't have any gluten like wheat does, but you can treat it more like cakes. So if you want to make like an acorn cake or an acorn bread, you absolutely can do so. You just gotta make sure that you process them correctly. Now, processing acorns is something I have not done personally myself. I've seen how to do it, I've read how to do it, but I haven't personally done it yet. But it's nice to know that I have this as an option because they're all over my property. And one of the main reasons why I like them is because if you know anything about hunting, especially white-tailed deer, you know that they love going around oaks during October, November when the acorns drop. So if you pay attention to the acorn drop, congratulations, you can harvest wildlife as well. Down here, right here, is number 2 on this list, and that's going to be Paw Paw. Now, I just planted this in the fall, and this is where I'm at so far with this tree. There's still one over there, and there's another one over there, but they're about the same size. Because basically you want to keep planting as many as you can around you. But Paw Paws, just like oaks, are native to my climate. So when it comes down to it, all I really got to do is put them down, and they prefer a shady understory like I have here. This is one of those fruits that if you actually read some of the journals of Lewis and Clark, they were eating these on the way out to the west. This is one of the natural fruits that happens, and they don't store very well, so you kind of have to eat what you get. So that's what they were doing. They were just basically engorging themselves on Paw Paw fruit. And I know when I was growing up, we had a Paw Paw fruit in the creek behind my house, and every July, August, we'd be eating the crap out of some Paw Paws for like 2 weeks. But yeah, I wanted to make sure I had to set on my own property. And the good thing about Paw Paws is they have a smell that deer don't like. So they don't attack the leaves, and they don't attack the tree itself. So you can grow these without having some major like hardcore protection. That's why I wanted to plant as many as I possibly could. All right, so number 3 is going to be chestnuts. Now, this is a Dunstan chestnut. If you don't know, chestnuts used to be very, very popular here in the East Coast, all right, all up and down the East Coast of North America, but they were hit by a extremely punishing fungus from Asia back around 1910. So from about 1910 to 1940, all of the chestnuts basically died, okay? It gets to the point where the chestnuts, right as they start to produce chestnuts, they die back and they just resprout from the roots, and it's a never-ending cycle of not producing chestnuts. But they've been doing a whole bunch of testing and whatnot to try to get the chestnut back and survive the blight that actually killed it, and they're doing things like the Dunstan chestnut and Chinese chestnuts to where you can still get chestnuts without having to worry about that blight. So what I do is I like to plant these. I got a couple of them, one here, one way back over there, another one over there, so the deer can eat them, because one of the favorites of deer is going to be acorns and chestnuts. So I planted this more for the wildlife I have here, but I still like to know that I could eat these well if I want to, and I can when they get to that point. As you can see, it's still kind of young, not producing yet, but eventually one day it will, so that's why I put them here. Okay, so number 4 is going to be the black walnut. All right, as you can see, I have a whole grove here of black walnuts. This is back where I hunt. Black walnuts are native to the east coast of North America, but they are also one of the most, how do I put it, like medicinal of all nut trees, I guess, because the hulls of the black walnut are very good anti-parasitic. All right, so if you have things like worms or whatever, you can make a tincture out of the hulls, and congratulations, you can get parasites out of you. So that's one of the main reasons why the natives liked it so much. The nuts themselves are actually really good. They're hard to get to. You actually have to use rocks or a hammer to actually get it in there because they're not easy to peel. It's not like a pecan or something. It's pretty much ridiculous to get into, but I like having them around the property because they bring in squirrels and small game, and you just don't want to walk through them when they're dropping because they really hurt. Okay, so number 5 right here is going to be persimmon. This is the American persimmon variety because we have a native kind here. There's also a Japanese style that you can get, like most of them are like fuyu and stuff like that. They're a little bit more different than the native. They're bigger and they don't quite get as astringent as these guys do, but when these guys grow, they get to about, I don't know, that big. But if you don't wait till after the first frost, or at least the first cold snap, they're so astringent and tart, like it just makes your mouth like pucker. Like, you know, you'll suck the wax out of your ears if you bite them too early. So you have to make sure you wait for the fruit to mature properly so it's not quite as, you know, puckering. So that is kind of one of the drawbacks of American persimmons, but the deer absolutely love them. This is deer candy, is what they call it, deer candy. That's why I planted it down here in my food plot where I hunt, because this right here, the smell of any kind of persimmons will bring in deer from all over looking for. And sure enough, that's why I had to put this cage around it, because if I didn't, it'll be like my other one that I didn't put a cage around, and they completely strip it of all the leaves. So it's not just the persimmons they eat, it's the leaves as well too. So that's why I put it here, to bring in wildlife. If I want to eat them, I totally can, but this is more or less to bring in deer. So the next guy on my property is the plum. Okay, this is the American plum, and I have to fence it off because I learned the hard way. This thing was about this tall until, actually it was like above where I had the camera, but it was about that tall, and all of a sudden the deer came over and munched it down a little bit. So I had to fence it off just so we can get back to this point right here. So planting things like Chickasaw plum or native plums that are native to the East Coast and naturally grow here, they grow in things like thickets. All right, so the whole idea between me planting this is so this entire area will turn into one giant thicket, which is extremely good for wildlife because they can bed down and they can eat. All right, one of the first things that ripens around here is going to be your native plums. When I remember growing up, we had some Chickasaw plums on the back side of the property where the power line easement was, and it was always a nice little treat. They don't taste super great fresh, but if you make them into things like jellies, it's outstanding. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and propagate some here, and that's why I put these ones down. This was the American plum, not the Chickasaw plum, but it's just about the same idea. It's just a little bit darker in color, but hopefully get about another 2 years and this thing will be producing, and I can't wait. 7 on this list is going to be right there. It is the sycamore. All right, the American sycamore. It is completely natural here, native here, and it's one of my favorites because that thing can really shade out an area to where I don't have to worry about too many things kind of appearing around it. Not to mention really good mushrooms do appear around that as well, things like chanterelles and that kind of thing. But one of the reasons why I put this on this list is because this tree can be used like the same way that you would use a sugar maple. Okay, you can actually sugar this. It's not quite as sweet as a maple tree or maple syrup, but you can make sycamore syrup. And a long time ago, back, you know, pre-1930, a lot of the old timers used to make sycamore syrup and sell it everywhere. So they are very popular for that. That one right there is the perfect size if I wanted to make my own syrup. So knowing that I can is an extreme benefit, and it's just really good for wildlife, and I like having the tree around. So sycamore syrup is one of the things that was definitely popular here, and I want to keep that on my list. That's why it made it as number 7. All right, so number 8 is going to be the southern crabapple. Now there's a little war and battle going on between people if this is actually a native or not tree. I'm going to call it native for all the intents and purposes of this video, but I planted this to bring in wild game. Okay, things like turkey, things like deer love eating crab apples. Deer especially love eating the leaves, hence why I put it in a cage. But yes, crab apple is one of those things where I planted so I could also have a pollinator for my other apple trees, but it's one of those things that grows about this big. I know because I had one growing in my front yard when I was growing up, obviously not this house, and it's great for doing things like jams. You can make cider out of it, but more or less the reason why I grow it is again to bring in wild game because I'm a hunter. Number 9, and it's going to be muscadine grapes. All right, got muscadines and scuppernongs around here. These are muscadines. They've been growing up this pine tree and elm tree for the last couple years. They always seem to do well. Okay, they're native here. They're not like a European style grape. They're native, so they don't have they don't bunch together, and they got some pretty good seeds in them. But they're really good, especially on a hot day, and they seem to take the summer great here. Okay, I don't have to worry about any kind of funguses really doing anything bad to this plant. If it drops some, oh well. If the birds get some, oh well. They always produce so many grapes. It's kind of ridiculous. As you walk through the woods, especially right around August, you'll start seeing them just litter the ground, and you can pick them up all you want. So muscadines are extremely good resource to have. They bring in wildlife, and they're really good to eat, and you can make wine out of them if you really want to. So that's why it's number 9. Number 10 is going to be the beech nut. All right, as you can see here, I got some beech nuts going. This is American beech tree. They grow beech nut. I'm sure you've heard it in a song, you know, what does it go? I like to spit some beech nut in that dude's eyes. That's what he's talking about. So I've never actually eaten this before. I know you can eat them, but more or less I leave this for the wildlife, okay? So it brings in a lot of small game. Squirrels like eating them, so it's pretty easy to pick them off and use it to get other food, which is why I like to have it around the property. They grow really well around my creek, but this is totally edible if you need to. That's why I wanted to put it on this list. Now brings me to number 11. If you've been paying attention to the channel, you know what this is. This is my bunching style grapes, all right? These are Mars grapes. So since it's a different grape than a muscadine, since it's like a native to Europe kind of thing, it's not native here, then that's why it's coming on this list at number 11, because it's a whole different variety. And it is the Mars grape, all right? This is traditional bunching style grape. I've been working on this for about 3 years now. I finally have grapes, and I'm super, super excited. I cannot wait to actually eat these. But yes, I'm totally counting this as its own thing. So this is number 11, bunching grapes. So number 12, I've done a video on this one before, so I'm not going to do too long, but the mulberry tree. I've been here, I was here, what, last year, 2 years ago? I'll put a link to that video up here, but yes, the mulberry is an extremely vigorous tree. It grows so well. I did not plant this one. This was already on the property, but I've planted 2 more around the property because they grow so fast. They're great windbreaks, and they really do bring in wildlife. As of right now, there's a cardinal right there eating some of my mulberries. So the only drawback is you actually have to have a pretty good ladder to get most of these. So if you're trying to get them just from the ground, you're not going to get very many of them, but it's good to have around the property because it is an early source of food. Okay, so number 13, blackberries. Now, blackberries in my state of South Carolina are basically considered a weed. These things grow freaking everywhere. They come up wherever you clear off the soil of grass. If you clear it out, there's probably latent seeds in there that are going to germinate and you're going to get blackberries. Every time I mow, if I don't mow often enough, blackberries are just popping up throughout the yard. It's one of those things where birds eat the seeds and then spread them all around. So they literally pop up everywhere. So if you let the canes grow tall for 1 year, because it takes 1-year-old wood to actually get blackberries, then the next season you're going to start getting blackberries like this. This is literally 1 cane and I got blackberries all over. Now, you don't just have to have the natural or native thorned varieties. You can also buy thornless varieties, which I have over there next to my blueberries. The only problem is the thorns are the blackberries' native, like, natural defense mechanism, so they don't get eaten by things like deer and squirrels and all that other stuff. So whenever you have thornless varieties, guess what? You got to watch out for deer, because if you give them the opportunity, they're going to take a bite off the top, which has happened to me before. So the thorn variety, kind of like an insurance policy to make sure you're always going to have blackberries. What kind of crow is that? See, this is the thornless variety. Alright, so next we have the raspberry here. This is a cousin of the blackberry. You can have something like the black raspberry, which is like basically a cross between the two. The biggest problem with black raspberry is it kind of harbors the same disease as raspberry. So if you plant the black raspberry, you have a chance of jumping diseases back and forth to the raspberry to the blackberry. So it's kind of confusing, but I just don't plant the black raspberry. I'd much rather have the red varieties. They're much better in my opinion. So the only drawback is you have thorns, as you can see. I just got stabbed with one, and that's what keeps them from being eaten by deer. But they can be quite prolific. I had to cut this one real short when I moved it. I got 2 more on this side of the property. They don't do amazing here, but they do good enough. So that's why I keep them around. And just as a bonus, the leaves are considered a great medicinal for teas and like women problems. So if you have problems with painful menstruation, that kind of thing, a raspberry tea is perfect for you. So that's why I keep them around. Okay, so number 15 is going to be strawberries. Strawberries can be quite lucrative if you get lucky enough to harvest them. Most of the time with me, I have problems with slugs eating them or something else. So I have to be reluctant in how I use my pesticides, if I do use any, or if I just let things kind of go. So you got to harvest these things every single day, which can be a pain in the butt, but it's not that big of a deal. Fresh berries, especially ones that you know aren't sprayed, are very hard to come by, so that's why I do it. Let's see. It can be done. It just takes some patience. This is about 3 years worth of growth right here, and they've been spreading every single year. So number 16 is one of my absolute favorites. If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you know that I'm a humongous fan of oregano, so that's why it makes this list easily. I love oregano. I love putting it on everything. I like to make a lot of Italian food. I make my own pizza, so that's why I keep oregano handy. As you can see, it likes to spread. It grows very tall and is also a very good medicine. So it's one of those things where I will not be without having this. I will always have oregano. As you can see, it's almost smothering out those chives over there, but yes, oregano is one of my absolute favorites, so it will always be here. So while I'm here, I might as well go ahead and talk about it. Number 17 is going to be the chives. Chives are a perennial. I've had the same chive planted here for at least the last 4 years. Every single year, what I do is I like to burn this entire patch, the oregano and the chives, and they just come right back. Every single year, every single spring, these things pop up first. So it's kind of one of those things where I know it's springtime because the chive's starting to pop up. So if you live in a climate like mine, zone 8, you can absolutely grow either one of these and they will constantly come back, even if you mow them, burn them, whatever. They are definitely a perennial. So number 18 is asparagus. As you can see, this is humongous and it's intermixed with my bee balm. But asparagus is one of those crops that can literally live for like 20 to 30 years, so it is absolutely a perennial. And one of the things about asparagus is it's a labor of love, and it takes a long time to get to where it's going. So you might plant one-year-old crowns in the ground, and you're gonna have to wait 2 years at least so you can start harvesting, because that first season that those crowns come up, they're gonna be pretty small, gangly looking, and you don't want to harvest it because you're going to take away energy from that plant. So the whole general rule is you let them grow big and tall like this for the energy for following year, for the following season. So that's what happens. Now at the end of that year, when the fall comes, you can cut these down, burn them, mow it over, doesn't really matter, and they're going to come back out of the ground first sign of spring. So that's how you know it's really spring, because your asparagus is going to start popping up. And it's definitely one of my favorites. And every year that you let the plant get stronger like this, it's going to keep getting bigger and more numerous. So this is about year number 5 or 6 for me. So these things are shooting up some pretty thick spears, and they can get really long really fast. You got to make sure you're coming out and harvesting every single day. But as for perennials, if you want something that's going to keep coming back all the time, you definitely got to look into asparagus. All right, so another favorite of mine is going to be sage. Sage, as you can see, really takes over if you let it, because it is, again, a perennial. You can burn this, you can cut it back, and it's going to grow up just fine. And it's one of those plants that is extremely useful, because not only is it good for seasoning food and seasoning things like sausages, but it's also medicinal. So you have a good twofer here with this perennial. So having common sage in the garden is a no-brainer. If you have the opportunity, you absolutely need to put some of this stuff down. So while we're in the herb garden, I might as well finish up with number 20, and that's going to be thyme. Thyme is an amazing herb that's going to flavor just about any general dish that you may serve. Things like fish, poultry, they really enjoy having some thyme on there. And not only is it a very good seasoning, but it is also a very good medicine. So if you have a chance, if you have a spot in your garden, absolutely put some thyme, you won't regret it. So number 21 is one of my absolute favorites, and it's going to be blueberries. As you can see, I'm standing up. This is taller than me. And I got tons of blueberries on this bush. I have several of them, one there, and about 7 over there, plus 2 more by the chicken coop. So I've been planting a lot of blueberries because they're so easy. It literally takes like no time. I don't have to do anything to these guys. All I have to do is put a little bit of like pine straw as a mulch, because it's a little bit acidic, and they like things a little bit more acidic. That's all I really do. I don't fertilize, I don't do anything, and I still get good quality fruits every single year. So if you live in the southeast, for sure, make sure you grab some blueberries, the rabbit eye variety, and you will not be disappointed. All right, so the next one on my list, I think number 22, is going to be pears. This is a kefir pear, because I cannot grow Anjou style pears because we have something called fire blight. Okay, since there's so many cedars around here, it really holds on to like bacterias and stuff like, and funguses like cedar apple rust and fire blight, so it'll attack these trees and basically kill them. So if you have the opportunity to plant any kind of pear, you want to plant something that's resistant, and the kefir variety is resistant. So it's one of my favorites. That's why I planted it here. Unfortunately, the late freeze we got this year ended up killing all the bloom, so I'm getting no pears this year. But last year I got like 6 or 7 after thinning, which is really, really good. So hopefully next year I'll be able to get a good bumper crop. All right, so number 23 is going to be elderberry. Elderberries grow very well here. They are native to the United States, so I made sure to plant some on the property. They're extremely medicinal, so if you don't plant them, you don't know what you're missing out on, and they're easy. I haven't done anything except shield it from deer, because when I didn't shield it from deer, guess what? They were gone. So if you don't shield them, you're going to not get any elderberries. So the entire idea is to make sure that the deer don't chomp them away before you do. And as you can see, I've already got a flower. You can eat the flowers, you can eat the berries. I wouldn't eat anything else because I think there's cyanide in the leaves. So don't quote me on that, but definitely don't eat anything besides the berries and the flowers. But it's very easy to grow plant. If you have the opportunity, if you have the space, totally grow an elderberry. So number 24 is going to be hazelnut. This is a hazelnut tree, and guess how old this tree is? As you can see, it's only about, I don't know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, but you'll never guess how old that tree is. That's right, it's 4 years old. So when I first planted it, it was about that big. And after the first year, it got to maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 inches tall, and a tree limb from that tree, in like a real bad storm, landed right on top of it and basically cut it in half. So I snipped it right off the surface, maybe like this far up, and I basically ran over with the mower. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to have any more hazelnuts. Well, guess what? The following year, it came back. Started getting a little taller. The year after that, got a little taller. And then now, look at it. So that's how big we are. I don't think I'm going to get very much production out of this, if any, but it's nice to know that they grow here. And this is an American elderberry. I'm sorry, elderberry. This is an American hazelnut. And if I plant one more, then I'll actually start getting hazelnuts. I just kind of wanted to see if it'll work. And so far it looks like it does. I don't like the look of the leaves. Like it's just not a very healthy tree. So I might end up ripping it out, but at least I know hazelnuts work. Here is number 25, and it's the peach. The peach is actually native to China, but for some reason my area of South Carolina is like the perfect freezing hours of this tree. So that's why you see peach orchards as far as the eye can see in my general location. Unfortunately, one thing I didn't realize was exactly how much they have to spray just so they get peaches. You see right here, I got one peach, and there's maybe 7 or 8 more after thinning, but it's very difficult to get peaches here if you try to do it organically. That's one thing I've realized. Every bug wants to get in here. Funguses are all over the place, and you have what's called a peach tree borer, which goes into the actual trunk of the tree and kills the tree. So even the professional, the commercial growers have those problems, so I don't feel like I'm having like a major issue, but yeah, it's not very easy to grow these things. If I had the opportunity, I would love to try a better variety, but this is the Alberta, and so far it's actually giving me peaches. I enjoy eating them, but it's just very difficult to get them. So I don't ever plan on actually getting them, but if I do, it's like a lucky surprise kind of thing. Okay, so number 26 is going to be figs. As you can see, the fig tree is taller than I am. This thing's been down here for at least 6 years, and unfortunately the biggest problem I have with it is it's a brown turkey fig, is the temperatures we get in the springtime are so uneven that it kills it half the time. So if you get like a really late freeze, which we usually do, it's always like 6 weeks of, hey, these temperatures are warm, there should be no more freezes, and all of a sudden, like mid-March or end of March, early April, we get a frost, like 29 degrees. Well, when that happens, every single one of these leaves die. And if the leaves are opening up enough, then it'll kill the wood down to here. So that's what happened this year. It killed half the tree. The tree was much, much bigger last year, so I had to cut off half the tree. But if you haven't been able to tell, if you look down at the bottom, it's resprouting from the root ball vigorously. So it's one of those trees that just kind of takes a hit and keeps on going. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm gonna get a very big fig harvest this year. You do get 2 crops with fig trees. So if you don't get that big crop right in July, you'll usually get a secondary one in September. And that's what I'm probably gonna get with this guy. I'm probably gonna get some secondary ones, maybe a handful, 10, 12, something like that. So I'm not really hoping, I'm not really expecting very much, but I'm hoping I get some, so. All right, this is one of my babies right here. This is one of my favorites, my apple tree. I freaking love this tree. This thing's been down for at least 5 to 6 years. I think it's going on a 6th year now. And look at how big it is. It's probably at least 15 feet tall, if not more. And there are apples everywhere. And I've already thinned once. So I'm gonna have to thin again because there's always a little drop like end of May. You always get at least one fruit drop as the tree tries to like cull some of its own fruit so it doesn't break its own branches. So I'm gonna thin some more, but I'm looking at probably getting at least 3 dozen, maybe 4 dozen apples off this tree. This thing is loaded down. So what I'm missing with my fig tree, my peach tree, and my pear tree, I'm making up for it well with my apple tree. So I'm very happy I have this tree. It's still difficult, you still have to deal with a lot of issues. Growing apples organically in South Carolina is very tough, but it can be done. So I'm probably going to want to end up doing is spraying some Surround again, just so I can make sure I have some fruit. Because if I don't spray Surround, then right around July, mid-July, the codling moth starts coming through and damaging some fruit. So if I spray some Surround, it's supposed to mess with their vision so they don't land on my fruit. So that's what I'm hoping for, and that's what I'm going to do. So apples are one of my favorites. I love this tree. This is a Gold Rush apple, by the way, and I have a Williams Pride over there where it cross-pollinate. But yeah, if you live in the South, you can grow apples. It's just tricky. All right, so we are almost done with this list finally, right? Was it number 28, I think? It is going to be rosemary. As you can see, the rosemary bushes grow extremely well here. If you live in the southeast, if you live anywhere above, I believe 7B, you can grow rosemary and keep it outside all year long. I keep this right next to the house because it really does a good job at keeping insects away, and it's amazing flavoring. It's also one of my favorites because when I'm hunting and I'm trying to cover my scent, I like to come over here and just rub my whole body through this and before I walk in the woods, because when I do that, I don't have deer scent. Deer smell this, they don't smell me. So if you're a hunter, try that because it works very well for me. But yeah, you can put this stuff on pork, on poultry, whatever you really want to. I like to use it when I'm doing marinades, and it's very tasty. So you can use this for food and medicine. I highly suggest if you live in my area, you totally look at growing this. It's totally worth it. All right, so number, 29, we have mint. This is one of my patches of mint. The other one is actually more in that way, but that is mint. You want to put it somewhere. This is in my backyard area that I really don't care about. If you're going to want to put it in the ground, you're going to want to put it somewhere that you do not care it's going to spread. Because I just put this down, like 2 or 3 little ones, the beginning of the year, and now look at it. It's already clumped out like that. So this is one of those things that will spread over extremely fast. It's called aggressive for a reason. If you want to plant this, you can totally put it in a pot and be okay. But if you put it in the ground, be ready for it to spread. I'm okay with it because it's in the backside of my house, and mint is very good at getting rid of bugs, insects. Insects do not like mint. So you can also make mojitos with it. You can flavor your food like lamb, or you can use it as a medicinal, and you can also use it as an insect repellent. That's why I have it back here, so I'm glad I have it. So mint. All right, so number 30, and we're almost done, I promise. It is the pecan tree, or pecan. I've done a lot of conversations about this in that video that I posted about pecan oil that I did with a pecan press. I will put a link to that down in the description. Go ahead and check it out. But the pecan tree is one of my favorites. That's why I planted another one right here. That brings me to my last, but certainly not least, my olive tree. As you can see, it looks dead, right? But it's not. The reason why I put this on this list is because I was going to chalk it off as a loss. We got an extremely cold Christmas last year. I'm talking, it was 9 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what, like -5 degrees Celsius. So it was 9 degrees here. And these things are only really rated to about 12. I covered with a blanket. It didn't help because it was so windy, the wind was cutting through the blankets. And I thought I lost it. I was like, okay, because all the leaves started slowly dropping through the course of springtime to the point where there's no more leaves on this tree. So I said, all right, I guess I lost my olive tree. I'm not going to grow any olives. They just don't work in my climate. Well, before I mowed it over, I came to look at it one more time. And looky there. There's an olive branch popping right back out, no problem. So the tree survived, the roots survived. Now I don't think we're going to see another winter like we had this past season for a little while, because last time we had anything under 10 degrees was back in 2012 or 2013. So it's about every 7 or 8 years we get something like that, and by that point hopefully this tree is much bigger and will be able to handle that kind of temperature. So since this thing has been here, it grew. I started off like this big and it grew this big, so I'm hoping that the course of this summertime this is going to get to a nice decent size as well. I'll trim this off. The only reason I left this on here is because I wanted to show you how big it was versus to where it's at now. So, but I'm going to chalk that up as a success because even after that really cold snap, I still have olive tree alive, so I'm pretty happy about that. Alrighty, so there you have it. That is my list. Finally, we are finally done. Told you I have over 30 perennials, and obviously I was able to show you, and I didn't cheapen it out by putting things like lavender and echinacea, which I have over there, because that's strictly medicinal. You don't really eat that for any kind of flavor or anything like that. That is literally for medicine. So when it comes down to food-wise, that's what I wanted to include in this list. I think I did so. One thing I want to make sure I mention before I end the video is I've tried things like cherries, sweet cherries, and tart cherries, and both of them died within 1 year. So clearly they are not meant for my area. I've tried things like goji berries. Those are not meant for my area either, and neither is pomegranate. I've tried pomegranate. It was supposed to work well here, but not only did the deer absolutely love it, the cold killed it. So no pomegranate as well. If you have any other ideas that I should try, please put them down below in the comment section. I would love to see them. But with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed this tour of my property. Hopefully you got some ideas on some of the things that I planted that you might want to look at doing yourself. And yeah, if you like this video at all, please do me a humongous favor. Give me that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I will catch y'all later, okay?